Hello and welcome to the Marion Review, where we break down politics for today. I'm here with Creek Viking. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right. We're going to break down a few topics today, and also, I think we're going to be plugging your blog today to, just bringing it to light so you can tell the world just, how you're going to take off with this.
Yes.
Our first topic is the midterms. I mean, that's the big deal right now. Everybody has just been focused on the midterms. Even afterwards, the fallout was even worse than the buildup. So, I mean, what is your take on the Dems winning the House of Representatives?
Well, see, here's the thing about it is the fallout, I think, is built up more by media on both sides than what it's actually warranting. Um, there's always been a turnaround in the House after a presidential election in their first midterm. This one was actually one of the smallest I think I've ever seen as far as in our lifetime. It is the smallest turnaround percentage in the House since Ronald Reagan's presidency, which is not point for point with Ronald Reagan. Unfortunately, we have a different media than we did when President Reagan was in office. We have a different style of media, and that's part of what my blog is here to combat. Is I will not reject that I am a right-leaning news source. I do tend to be a little bit more favorable towards the right side or towards the conservative side. I am a libertarian. However, I don't lie. Not to say that I'm incapable of it. Every human being has a capability of it. It just tends to leave a bad taste. But
thank you for pushing that through, because I was going to say, everybody's capable of lying.
Everybody lies.
The smallest to the biggest. So,
but as far as the midterms go, we held on to the Senate. The GOP held on to the Senate by a majority. They held on to the presidency, obviously. I mean, that wasn't in question. And with what's going on with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg now, we may be looking at another turnaround. I know that she's trying really hard to hold on to that seat, at least until someone else is making the decision as to her replacement. But the truth is, I mean, I don't think that she's got another 2 years left in it. Whether it's a good thing that Donald Trump gets another justice appointment, I don't know.
So how about that? Falling in her home.
She, you cutting out a little bit, but I think I understood you. She didn't fall in her home. She fell in her office. She was walking across her office floor and fell, broke 3 ribs. And I mean, the unfortunate fact, I want to say she's 83 years old. And that's just unfortunate. She is aging. I keep saying I hate saying actually. I hate filler words. But that's I pray for her, and I hope that she can continue to do it. But let's face facts. The woman has been falling asleep at the bench multiple times. You have to question her ability to do her job at this point.
Well, I mean, we need a working justice. It needs to be a completely, working wheel. We don't need anybody in there that's going to fall behind. Any weak link is a weak link, and the chain can break, and then anybody can get through. I mean, they can break the bureaucracy of the American government. Then,
no, I absolutely agree with you. And a lot of people will say things like Justice Kavanaugh was the weak link. He was the leaning justice, as I've heard him called, or I've even heard him called the rapist judge, which is ridiculous. It's a horrible thing to say about a human being. Rape is a terrible crime, and to accuse someone of it falsely is also a terrible crime.
Speaking of which, and laws, and while we're on politics, what's your take on the turnaround, like the accuser of rape? If they don't find them guilty of rape, how should that turn around to the accuser?
Okay, this is extremely difficult. I think that, just as in any system, you can be confused. We have people who are convicted wrongfully of various crimes. And should that fall back on an accuser? Not necessarily. I mean, I have personally been the victim of falsehoods against me, and also I have accused people falsely, not realizing that it was false. Should that fall back on me because I was confused? No, not necessarily. I made my amends. Luckily, it never went too far, and nothing terrible ever happened out of it. But there are accidents that happen. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Now, the flip side of that being that there are people who use it as a tool. Um, right now, we've got people, especially rape. Rape is the worst one because women can get a lot out of it, and we have this culture, this as I like to call it. I know I'm going to get some backlash for this, but as I like to call it, this feminazi culture, this subculture, actually. And what it is, it's the modern feminist movement, which is something I wholeheartedly disagree with. Do I believe in feminism? Absolutely. Do I believe in the modern feminist movement? No, I think it's ridiculous. I think it needs to shut the hell up. And I realize, anybody who reads my blog, anybody who's talked to me knows that I'm a little bit cutting edge on the sense that I'm opinionated, and I believe wholeheartedly in the First Amendment. But as far as the modern feminism, there is a difference between petitioning or protesting for equal rights and protesting to be considered superior. And there's a huge difference. There's a difference between holding up signs demanding the right to vote and shoving your vagina in the faces of children in Times Square. And I'm sorry if that word makes people uncomfortable, but that's exactly what's going on in our world right now. And this feminism, this feminist superiority movement, as I tend to refer to it a lot, has given rise to this idea that women are better than men. And you're not. And you're not better, you're not worse. It's people are people. And this idea that women are better is giving rise to the claims of false rape in order to gain footholds, in order to gain power over men. Now, when you condemn someone's life in such a manner, so aggressively and so terribly and for such a long term, yes, I think that you do need to face prosecution for that. If it can be proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, which is what our entire justice system is based on, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you did, in fact, knowingly make the accusations intending to do harm.
That's a really, really broad area to cover right there, especially considering the fact that, most people are going to bounce back to, Blasey Ford versus Kavanaugh in the whole sense of, she was falsely accusing Kavanaugh, and it was, most would believe it was a ploy by the left side to completely just chop the legs out from underneath the right. And it did seem like it because they were really gung-ho about stopping Kavanaugh from taking this seat. And it was a very big opportunity to get in and, express his ideals and his opinions and make his opinions count as well. So
the problem with that goes back. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I was going to say the problem with that is it's much more complicated than that. See, Blasey Ford, in my opinion, was a puppet. I think that she is everything that the modern feminist women's movement hates, in a sense that she was so weak-willed and used in this whole situation. And they tried so hard to make her some kind of martyr or some kind of symbol of their revolution. But she was so wimpy. And she was used by the likes of Dianne Feinstein. She was used by the likes of Maxine Waters. She was legitimately just straight up used as a ploy, just like you said. Now, I don't think it was anything as convoluted as trying to chop out the legs of the GOP or of the right-wing side in Washington in general. I think it was more along the lines of trying to stall. It was a stall tactic. They thought that they were going to win the Senate. You notice that suddenly the entire movement lost steam when they realized that all the predictions had the GOP keeping the Senate.
Yeah. Speaking of that, going back to how, the Senate is won by the GOP. Now, on the other hand, the other side of the congressional, body was won by the Democrats. So with that being said, how do you feel about the allegations of investigations into allegations wasn't the word, the rumors of investigations into the Trump administration?
No, it's not rumors. I mean, they are going to happen, and this is part of the reason why all of a sudden you have Jeff Sessions, who lost his job. You know, he tendered his resignation. He was fired. I mean, Trump fired him.
Yes.
And I don't know whether I agree or disagree with that. I do know that a lot of senators that were involved in these investigations and things like that flip-flopped very heavily on the issue of Jeff Sessions. And unfortunately, I haven't studied the man enough to be able to make an informed decision on him. But or his replacement. I honestly couldn't even tell you his replacement's name yet. I was in the process of researching that when you asked me to be on the show, and kind of threw everything together pretty quick. But no, it's fine.
I didn't give you much time to really think about it.
No, you didn't. And it was a lot. There's a lot involved in that, and that's part of the new research that I'm doing right now. But I'm sorry, what was the original question? I went off on a tangent.
How do you feel about the investigation into the Trump administration?
So it's not a rumor. It's going to happen. It is happening. They are investigating the Russian collusion, which I think that they just need to give up the ghost on this one. It's gone through so many. It's taken so much. And nothing is sticking. Nothing is there. And there's nothing there to stick. Do I think that Trump is an absolute moral and completely 100% legal man? No, I'd be a fool to say that. Do I know of any? Huh?
We've known that since the beginning, before Trump was even in office. We've known that Trump has been a really uncouth man pretty much his entire business life.
Well, so, I mean, there are a lot of tools a carpenter uses. There are saws, and there are levels, and there are shims, and there are, when necessary, a hammer. And that's what Trump is. He's a hammer. And that's what he's doing right now. He's hammering the nails in place to hold the frame together. I'm afraid that the GOP may soften up after him, and that's what I'm really worried about. But I won't get into that. We'll save that for a closer to election video. But back to the question at hand, though, in the investigations. They are investigating him. They're going to investigate that. They're demanding his tax returns, and they're going to spend the next 2 years chasing every ghost that they can find. That's kind of the problem. It's the pro and the con of this situation. Anybody like you or I, or anybody who is a right-leaning side, these investigations do two things for us. One, it drums up a lot of media for me to write on, and I love that, and I love that. But the other thing it does is it keeps them busy, and it creates a measure of busy work for the DNC, and they're going to chase this ghost, and they're going to push impeachment proceedings, which will never stick, because with a GOP Senate, they're never going to actually try an impeachment proceeding unless they can bring just beyond a shadow of a doubt proof. We're talking Clinton level proof. The man got a blowjob in the office. Forgive the phrasing, but that's what happened. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows he lied about it. That's the level of proof they'd have to bring about against Trump. Like, they'd almost have to bring a confession to get an impeachment. But they're going to chase this for 2 years. They're going to completely ignore their entire constituency, and they're going to set up a full-on red wave in 2020. Because one, unless something very drastic happens, knock on wood that it doesn't, Trump will not lose in 2020. You can run Chelsea Clinton against him. He's still not going to lose.
I couldn't see Chelsea Clinton winning anyway.
I could against anyone else. She's a power wave. I'm not going to lie. But, Trump's not going to lose. We're not going to lose the Senate. I very much fear that we will never lose the Senate again. So all we have is the House.
Well, there's even a backlash against the Dems, just straight out of the gate, running up these investigations like they're not even, like I said before, they didn't even give time to cut the umbilical. Yeah. That baby was popped out and it was done. They're like, oh, we're going to investigate. We won.
I'll give this to Speaker of the House Pelosi, and I'm surprisingly cordial. A lot of people think that I'd be much more aggressive towards her. She holds her guns, no pun intended. But she does. She sticks to her. She sticks to her politics, and she sticks to her platform, and she's done it all along. And I will always approach her with a certain amount of decorum and a certain amount of cordiality, because she knows what her constituency wants, and she's even trying to work with Trump, and she's trying to work with Ryan, and she's trying to pull it all together, because she sees what I'm seeing right now. We are witnessing the death of the Democratic Party as we know it. These are death throes that we're seeing. They are grabbing on to everything they can to pull themselves out. I remember one time in a biology class, I had a teacher explaining to me that when people die, they'll pull their clothes away from themselves, like they're trying to pull off the shackles and things like that. And that's what I'm seeing with the Democratic Party, metaphorically speaking. Unfortunately, I'm afraid of what's being born in its place. And that's where we're seeing the rises of Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. And I see in our lifetime, the bipartisan is going to be the GOP and the American Democratic Socialist Party.
Well, the whole idea of socialism is rather far-fetched anyway, because since the beginning of time, the strong haven't always upheld the weak.
No.
If you want to live by animal laws, the weak die.
Yeah. Well, I mean, socialism's never worked. I mean, go throughout the entire history of socialism, it's never been effective. Absolute best case scenario, it still spawned some of the worst and absolute evil regimes in history that had to be put down. But the problem we have now is the Democratic Party has gotten so convoluted and has gotten so full of itself and so detached from its constituency. I mean, in Nevada, a dead pimp was elected to Senate as a Republican because the dead pimp was the better option. I mean, I'm not making this up. This actually happened. He was the owner and proprietor of the Bunny Ranch. He died a month before the election. He won the election. They all knew he was dead.
There's got to be some kind of legalities there. I mean, is there something that can be like undercut on that
place? But literally, it was better to vote for him and whoever he had set up to take his place rather than the Democratic candidate in that area.
That's really bad. I mean, that really gives the Democratic Party a really bad name. And you know, throughout history, the Democrats haven't always been as bad as they are now. You know, I
disagree completely. I think they've been as bad or worse. I mean, let's just go through history of Democratic Party right now. Let's just go through the history real quick. You have Japanese internment. That was the Democrats. You have slavery. That was the Democrats. You have the opposition of the civil rights movement. Obviously, I'm not going chronologically right now, but that was the Democrats. Dred Scott, Democrats. Throughout the history of the United States, the Democrats have always been the party of oppression. They've always been the party of the most evil that America has ever committed. And yet, because the South has now turned to be primarily Republican, and I have some excellent PragerU videos on this, but because the South has turned to be primarily Republican, suddenly the Republican Party is supposed to be the racist.
Thank you for turning that around. I was actually going to bring that up.
Yeah.
How, you know, the most oppressive party has turned it around and used it as their platform.
It's a bully tactic.
It's absolutely 100% ridiculous that you know they like you said, it's a bully tactic. They're against bullying. They hate bullies, they say, but yet they're the biggest bullies in Washington, D.C. If nothing goes their way, you're a racist. You're what to say?
You and I are standing there, and I turn around and stab a man. And this is metaphor, obviously, but I turn around and stab a man. The police get there, and I look at you and say, "Why did you stab him?" It's the same tactic, only on a much grander scale.
Well, I can see why. I mean, it gets the attention off of you,
absolutely,
in a sense. But you know, obviously, when the forensics go through, you know, I'm going to be exonerated.
And that's how this happens. That's why people like you and I exist. That's why I accept all comers in debate, as long as it's done respectfully and it's done intelligently. And you can't come at me and say, "Well, you're a racist because you don't believe like me." I'll shut it down. I'm done. Because that's not an argument, or that's not a debate. That's an argument. You can't come at me with straw man tactics. You can't come at me, you know, claiming morality above laws, because I'm not debating morality. Morality is a completely different subject. Morality is something that you do of your own accord. Laws are something you do because you have to. There's a difference.
Of course.
You know, but other than that, I mean, I will take on all comers. And I wrote in one of my articles that I had a debate with someone, and they answered my question with a question, which I hate. But the person that I happened to be debating was someone I had a tremendous amount of respect for, so I didn't shut it down right away, which I ended up regretting because it was complete straw man of why can't you, why wouldn't you, why don't you? You're not answering my questions. You're just asking me questions. You know?
That just keeps a revolving door around. I mean, that
Exactly.
you don't. I mean, I can understand maybe asking open-ended questions.
Mhm.
Don't you know? Don't sharpen iron with iron. You know.
Yeah. Um, no, and I absolutely agree with you. And of course, you've known me a long time. I'm well versed in debate. I'm actually pretty good at it. Uh, I've studied the likes of Donald Trump, who is one of the best deal makers in our history. Whether you like him or don't, the man legitimately wrote The Art of the Deal. That's an actual book. Um,
Yes,
and I've read that book.
you're welcome, Trump. We just plugged your book.
Right. I don't think he needs it too much.
No.
But I've read Ben Shapiro, multiple Ben Shapiro books. Right now, I'm reading Tucker Carlson's Ship of Fools, and I've read the other side too. And that's where a lot of people like my articles because I do in my sources at the bottom of each article, I'll post at least one opposing source if I can find one that's intelligent and legitimate. I'll post at least one opposing source. Go find out for yourself. That's my whole message. Ask questions. And I've read Hillary Clinton's What Happened, which was whiny dribble. I'm sorry, but that was terrible. I'm just being honest. It really was. As an honest book review, it was nothing but, it was his fault, and it was his fault, and it was her fault, and it was their fault, and I hated it. But I read it.
Now, bear in mind, this is an open platform. I'm not going to fault you for anything that you say. Just it's
Don't get you sued. I know.
don't get me sued. Don't get yourself sued. We don't want to.
No, and that's what's really fun about this. And one more point that I want to make that I'm going to kind of lead you to here: the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. A lot of people glossed over it. A lot of it didn't get a lot of coverage in the media, which I thought was sad and ridiculous because I thought it needed a lot of coverage in the media. But we live in a world where important things happen on an hourly basis anymore. So, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, huge packet of judges just got appointed. Trump actually superseded the Senate Judiciary Committee, which included, if I remember right, Feinstein and Waters. So they got a little uptight about that. But he did. He went past them. And, excuse me, the big deal is the first gay judge was appointed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I thought that was a huge deal. That was a huge step for tolerance from our president, but it gets superseded because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Well, it goes back to that topsy-turvy platform of the left. The it's okay for us to do it. The double standards are there. You can see that, and it's okay for us to do it. But if you do it, you're a fascist pig.
Well,
and
you can be a gay judge, but you have to be a liberal gay judge. You can be a black president, but you have to be a liberal black president. You can be a female senator, but you need to be a liberal female senator.
Okay, so because I don't have the title of liberal, I don't fit your platform, so therefore I don't fit in your world.
Exactly.
So
And that's the way that they look at the world. It's not diversity, it's believe the way I do. They've come from this platform of diversity, but where are they being diverse?
historically, there was another group of people that acted like this. In fact, one man acted like this and got an entire nation to think the exact same way that he did. And it was the reason that Europe was in shambles for so many years. It still is. I mean, there's Europe has not recovered completely from World War II. And Hitler, I'll say this, Hitler was the downfall of Europe.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. The man who brought himself up on the platform of building Germany to its former glory, a very similar platform we hear from a lot of Democrats, and I guess a lot of Republicans too. Actually, it's just a pretty popular platform. I won't do that. I won't turn opinions that way. But the platform we hear a lot, he was supposed to bring it to its former glory. He didn't. And that's what I think Democrats want. And I definitely advise the book Death of a Nation by Dinesh D'Souza. It's called The History of Plantation Politics. And it definitely gives you a good insight into the Democratic Party and the history of the Democratic Party and the history of the Republican Party at that.
Well, I mean, look at a history too, and I'm thinking about this all on the same level. I mean, the Dems they want to win. I mean, more than anything, of course, so do the Republicans. That's the entire thing. It's all one big competition, and it really is. And look into, I mean, you're a history man. I know you are. You're a big history buff.
Absolutely.
World War I was Germany owned for the longest time, but Germany got big and got arrogant, and they tried to fight on three fronts, and it ended up costing them more money than they could, shell out, and eventually they fell.
Well, I mean, you had Germany and Austria and the Ottomans, and when the Ottomans fell, the other two really didn't have. I mean, it took those three legs to stand to make it.
And then during World War II, trying to, like you said, Hitler trying to raise them to their former glory, he tried the same thing.
Strategically speaking, and this is just the history buff and me coming out, strategically speaking, I think that Hitler misinterpreted Sun Tzu severely and thought way too much of Machiavelli, to be honest. But
oh God!
And you're right, he fought on two fronts. But look at Hitler's politics. I mean, the man grabbed a nation that was on its knees. It was in its last breath, and he gave them not only something to work toward, but somebody to blame for all of their problems. And this is where I like to compare the National Socialist movement of Germany. And I'm not talking about the Nazi Party specifically. I'm talking about the actual movement that put the Nazi Party in power. I like to compare that to the modern Democratic Party. You have places like Detroit. You have places like Flint. You have places like, let's get a little closer to home, Fort Smith, Arkansas. Places that are dying, that are literally starving. These cities are starving themselves from the inside out. You go through them, and they're like third world countries when you're driving through them, and they're terrible. Kansas City, Missouri, half of it looks like crap. Unfortunately, you never know which half, but
it kind of switches from time to time.
It really does. But there are places that are economically dying, and you have these democratic socialists, much like the National Socialists, saying, "Here, let me give you a hand up." Well, nobody's going to slap it out of the way. It's just like what just happened in our home state now. They offer this increase in minimum wage, and then I would say 80% of the people I spoke to opposed it. No one would vote against it because nobody turns down free money, regardless of what. And I'm not saying that it's free, it's wage earned. I know. I'm not going to get into the semantics, but nobody turns down money, regardless of what the long-term repercussions may be, because no one's thinking about the long term. They're thinking, what am I going to have for dinner tonight at this level? And I write it in my blog a lot. You know me. I grew up in poverty.
Of course.
Yeah, as did you, actually.
Yes.
And we understand what poverty is. We also understand what it's like to climb out of it. And it is possible without the free handouts and without, and I'm not saying that I never took welfare. I did. There were times in my life when I had to. Welfare programs are useful. They're beneficial. But taking advantage of them, abusing the system, you abuse it and eventually you no longer have it. And these democratic socialists are the absolute idolatry of abuse for these systems.
The thing that gets me the most with the whole welfare system is, like you're talking about, the abusers. Mm-hmm. And when the abusers do it, and it falls back to what the Trump administration is doing. They're making so many cuts to welfare that it's harming the people who need it the most.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Collateral damage.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, and that's somewhere where you and I think disagree. The welfare system is hurt right now, and unfortunately, you break a leg, it's not going to reset without any pain. That's
the welfare system is on life support.
It is, and it can be saved. And these revamps that I think that the Trump administration are making leaps and bounds to do that. I think that there's more that needs to be done, and I'm an advocate for stronger checks on welfare systems. Do I think that a single mother needs to have subsidized child care? Yes, absolutely. I also think that she needs to go to monthly or even weekly check-ins with uh, CPS or DHS or whatever their state tends to have in order to verify how they're caring for their children. I think that if you're going to take a handout from the state, then, and this is where I tend to get at odds with a lot of libertarians, if you take a handout from the state, then the state suddenly has a say in the way that you conduct your business, in this sense, raising your children. Do I think that needs to be permanent or that they need to always have that say? No. But I think that's an excellent incentive for getting off of that program, for working your way up, which is absolutely possible. I hate the people who say, well, the American dream is dead, the middle class is dead. That's bull. I had to censor myself there, but that's bull. Yeah, thank you. The American dream is not dead. The middle class is not dead. I am middle class. I'm pushing my way into upper middle class right now. I came from poverty. I've clawed my way up to this point. I did it at times working 2 or 3 jobs. I did it at times, working my way up through a system and promotions and things like that. The blog, I'm hoping, is a new source of revenue to push me up to that upper middle class, that 6-figure income. So it's definitely possible. The people who say that it's not are just not willing to try, or not willing to make the sacrifice necessary to do it.
Well, it goes back to that animalistic policy, or not policy, but animalistic way. Mm-hmm. If you feed a wild animal, eventually the animal becomes dependent on you.
Absolutely, it's no longer wild.
It will not go find its own food anymore. Yep. And same way with people. If you give them too many handouts and you pamper them too much, then they're going to not rely on themselves to go do it. I absolutely agree with you on that one. And as far as welfare checks go, I don't have anything against that. It's the same sense as borrowing a car. Like, if you borrow a car from somebody, they're gonna have a say-so on where you go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to say so on where that money gets spent. And it's the same reason why I advocate for IDs being put on food stamps, SNAP benefit cards. I think that you should have your picture on that card. That way people can't sell them to go buy drugs and things like that. That's meant for food.
I will give Arkansas props on one thing. Mm-hmm. The American government has put a thing out there called EBT cash, and EBT cash can be obtained, through an ATM, certain ATMs, and you can pull money out to get things like gasoline or something like that. I will give Arkansas one thing: they have cut that out.
Well, and Arkansas has a program that I think a lot of states need to pick up, and I'm a huge advocate of this program. It's called the TANF program.
Yes.
And because Arkansas believes so strongly in this, and I believe so strongly in this, they don't just give you a handout. They expect you to do something with it. So I think that this needs to be more of a national program. I think that there needs to be a push for a national program involving this. Or if nothing else, at very least, a national charity involving this. And I wish I had the funds to start that up. I don't as of now. But basically, you have to go through job training, whether it's vocational, whether it's college, something like that. And the state pays you a small amount to make ends meet while you're going through that training. And then they expect you to actually put in an attempt to get a job after your training. Mm-hmm. So it's a great program, I think.
It's a wonderful program. And, it's Arkansas's way, I really think it should be adopted by every state in the union, because it promotes the person to help themselves. Mm-hmm. And you can make your own way. You don't need help. You might need a boost, but you don't need help. Mm-hmm. And you don't need it done for you. And that goes. Speaking, I'm going to speak highly of our home state here for a little bit, because you got to pay a little bit of homage to your home state. Mm-hmm. And they also have another program here called Arkansas Works, which takes over the Medicaid program for Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And it's like the marketplace, and except that Arkansas pays the difference on it. Now, they've come out with new requirements, and I think it's like 80 hours of work per year.
See, and that's almost a good amount. I do that almost in a week. But
Well, I get that, but this is for
yeah,
like you said, you're single mothers that can't get out and do that. They can volunteer their time for 80 hours. They can do community service. They can do all kinds of outlets. They have been given outlets to do this to keep their free health care, and then people complain about not getting their health care anymore because they can't step out and do just 80 hours of work in a whole year.
yeah, and let's not get this wrong. This was originally a Trump idea. It was a Trump platform piece actually. And let's not get the idea of the system wrong. They're not including people who are too disabled to work. They're not including people in general on disability at all. You know, the original idea was that you were to work 20 hours a week, work or volunteer 20 hours a week. It didn't even have to be at a job because some people legitimately just can't get hired. Work or volunteer 20 hours a week in order to maintain your welfare benefits. That's not asking the world. And like I said, it's not including disabled people. It's not including people who aren't able to work. But yeah, and Arkansas has a lot of really great ideas, and they have a lot of really bad ones. And they say that we're the poorest state in the union. It's not actually true. We just don't owe any money to anybody else.
Well, doesn't that make us pretty rich? I mean,
you'd think so. You'd think so, but
we're also a state that is pretty well self-sustaining. We don't really rely on other states to help bail us out. I mean, we don't go ask Oklahoma and be like, hey, kind of suffering this month. Can you spot us for the next few days or anything like that? We have a great industry. We have the biggest rice import export.
So literally more rice than China. China orders rice from Arkansas.
Correct. We have more rice. I mean, drive down to Little Rock and cross the river, and what do you see? I mean, even as close as Conway, you see nothing but rice paddies, and you're like, what gives? Southeast Arkansas, we have one of the biggest soybean crops next to Kansas.
I mean, don't get me started on soy.
I mean, we have this way of sustaining ourselves, and if more states would look into Arkansas's policies, they might find that it would work and that they could turn their deficit around. Take Illinois, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois.
Whole different thing. I have relatives in Illinois. I have friends in Illinois. You have friends in Illinois.
I do have friends in Illinois.
The thing about Illinois is it suffered from liberal policies for far too long, and it's going bankrupt. And that's as you will recall, our former president Barack Obama was the mayor, if I'm not mistaken, of Chicago.
Maybe you're thinking Jerry Springer. I don't know.
Jerry Springer, I think, also was, but I'm pretty sure that Barack Obama was the mayor of Chicago. I know that he was a senator from Illinois.
Yes.
And think about what happened under his policies. Think about what Chicago was and is to this day. And that gets into the whole gun debate. And I've made the gun debate so many times. I've spun myself around. I've spun myself around. I've turned blue trying to debate these people. And the ideas that are presented to me, that are presented as common sense, are so ridiculous. And Chicago is proof. It's absolute proof, but they're bringing it in from other states. Well, then that's still breaking that law. What makes you think that they're not getting guns from Mexico if we ban all guns in America? What makes you think that they're not pulling them in from overseas? We're pulling in over, and these figures are rounded because unfortunately we can't get exact figures on them because of how many actually die, but we're pulling in over 10 to 50,000 Chinese a day in sex trades and slavery here in America through our own ports illegally. What makes you think they're not going to get guns illegally? I mean, these are human people.
I mean, outlaw guns all you want, because criminals have listened to the law since the beginning of time, correct?
Exactly. I love what Brad Stein says about it, and I've quoted Brad Stein a lot, and I love what Brad Stein says about this. So, you could ban guns, that could work, but if it works so well, I don't know, let's ban crime.
To start, let's get the whole picture.
Right?
Let's just torch the whole picture.
Like I said, I don't want to go too deep into that because I've talked.
Let's not. I'm going to give you a moment here. I would like you to tell us a little bit more about your blog. Where you're headed, what your goals are, what your aim is. Just some general information. Just I'm going to give you the floor and let you just open up on it and tell everybody, plug it good, because I've read your blog and it's very good.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As you know, my name is Creek Viking. It is a pen name. I think actually my real name might even be on here, but it is a pen name. I use a pen name when I write my blog, and it's mainly an homage to my background and my history. I come from various different ancestries, but two of the most prominent are my Norwegian ancestry and my ties to the tribe of Creek Indians. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the bad word. We don't care. Trust me. I don't know what that means.
Nothing.
Oh, okay. So no, we don't care about the word Indians, but I am part of the Creek tribe, the Bear Clan. Second generation descended from leaving the Alabama area where the reservation is. So I use that name, and I basically talk on patriotic points. As I say in one of my first articles, I was raised by a whole, forgive the phrasing, but tribe of people. My grandparents, my two grandpas, were very essential in the way that I was raised, and both of them were veterans, combat veterans. Both of them saw a lot of very terrible things overseas, but the one thing that they never lost was a love for their country, and that's one thing I learned from them very clearly. I have been writing since I was in junior high. I've taken multiple communications courses. I've taken multiple debate courses. But most importantly, I've taken multiple free writing courses, and I've tried my hand at fiction, and I'm good at it, but it can't ever hold my attention as well. And so I began writing a lot of very long posts on Facebook, and I started noticing that no one's going to read a long post on Facebook. So that's where I decided to start doing the blog. And you can find it at creekviking.wordpress.com, soon to be creekviking.com. And it's little, I try to stay below 2,000 words, which sounds like a lot. It's not a lot. It's actually very easy to read inside of 5 to 10 minutes. I am colorful, and I don't mean that in a sense of I'm vulgar. I mean, I'm colorful. I use a lot of adjectives. I use a lot of high terminology, as it's called, or I'm extremely articulate. So it makes it a little easier to read. Someone told me once, you feel smarter for reading it. But it's that's not my goal. My goal is just to be informative. There is a lot of media, a lot of mainstream media that is very left-leaning. I do not hide the fact that I'm right-leaning, but I don't lie, as I said before. And just go and give it a read, and you can make up opinions. And the Facebook page, facebook.com/creekviking, and Twitter @creekviking. You can always say anything you want to say. Try to keep it as respectful as possible. But you do open yourself up for discussion, and you're welcome to disagree with me on Facebook. And I interact with my audience pretty well.
Oh, no. Spoken to a T.
Yeah, I'm a little long-winded.
Hey, that's okay. I asked you to elaborate on your blog, and you did just that. Is there anything in the future any aim that you want to take? Is there any twists or turns that you want to take, or you want to keep that kind of exclusive?
Well, right now, everything is very up in the air. I've talked to a few people about a lot of local positions, city council positions and things like that I wouldn't mind running for. Eventually, I would like to run for a state, if not a national office. Now, whether or not that's logical, for those who know me, know that, surprise, surprise, I am not college educated. I am a blue-collar man. I do work in a factory, actually, almost 60 hours a week. So on average, about 60 hours a week. And then I come home and I write. I am well-spoken, and I do have the patriotic ideas of the American people in mind. And I would love to eventually be able to represent at least some of those people and their interests. I think that's what we need in our government, both state and national. I think that we need honest people who can't be bought. And I'm not a big fan of money. I make as much as I need. I don't think I'll ever need more. So I'm not a big fan of large, expensive items. I'm a blue-collar guy. I'll die a blue-collar guy. So I think that we need honest people who can't be bought in government.
Well, that's a fact. I mean, you put a good man in office. My grandpa always said this. My grandpa was a great man. You know, you had the privilege
Yes,
to know him
I
as
did. I had
well.
the privilege of knowing him.
And
He's one of the best men I ever knew.
and he said you take a good man and you put him in office and he's corrupt. And I I can't say that's always going to happen because that would be very leading, and it's not always going to happen because there are people in office that have great morals, and some that we can actually emulate, and it would you know serve us.
Let me see if
So
I can. Let me see if I can censor this a little bit. But what my grandpa always said is, what we need in what we need in office is a good man who isn't afraid to protect his butt and whip out his stuff.
yeah, I got you on that one. Way to
He
keep
was
it
a
PG
veteran
there,
through
man.
and through. He had a vet in his mouth.
Way to keep it PG there. I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a age sensitive
Absolutely.
video blog here, so you know I
As
don't.
is my blog as well. And feel free to let your children read it. It doesn't. I do get fall into a little bit of name calling, but it's always very highbrow. I don't cuss. I don't go into vulgarity on it. I did
Uh,
call Bernie Sanders Senator Palpatine.
Fitting.
It is, isn't it? I also referred to him as the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, I saw that. I actually saw your post about that, and I had to say I kind of squeezed out a little chuckle about that one.
I bet.
I mean, a little nostalgia went up my spine. If you,
I think the worst I ever did was when I referred to Ocasio Cortez, and it really isn't all about insulting liberals. It really isn't. But this particular post was, and I think I referred to Ocasio Cortez as less congresswoman and more someone I would expect to see in a fetish video on Pornhub.
well, we can't turn this into
I think that's the worst I ever went.
yeah, we can't turn this into an insult show because then we would be called Saturday Night Live. So
Right? Oh,
and
don't get me started.
no, okay, yeah, that was my whole thing.
Yeah,
Get going.
that was so horrible. That was okay. So modern Saturday Night Live, aside from Keenan Thompson is hilarious, but he is, and always has been since we were kids. But
Although I think the Cosby joke might be a little outdated by now.
yeah, maybe.
Too
Anyway,
soon?
no, I just was fighting the urge to do the secrets in the pudding joke. Well, you see, the secrets in the pudding. Oh, yeah.
Okay, now you are going to be called a rapist by
Right. I know.
By quite a few people. So let's.
I am also a stand-up comedian. And I do a lot of jokes and things. I'm not going to get into it. This isn't to plug my stand-up comedy. But I, as far as Saturday Night Live goes, they're not funny. And this particular guy, I forget his name. I know he was boning with Ariana Grande for a while, which she's pretty. She's dumb as rocks, but she's pretty. But it didn't bother me that he made fun of him. He was making fun of everybody. It didn't bother me that he made fun of the congressman from Texas, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me now, and I apologize for that. I don't have any of my notes up or anything like that. But he has a patch, and he lost his eye in combat. He got hit by an IED and lost his eye, and as well as, from what I understand, various other small injuries and things like that. But the guy, it wasn't the fact that he made fun of the way he looked, and I believe he said he looks less like a congressman and more like someone you would see in porno or something. I don't know. And it's very similar to what I said about Ocasio Cortez, actually, now that I think about it, and I didn't realize that when I wrote it. But what bothered me was the fact that he's like, well, I know he lost his eye in war or whatever. It's like, don't just gloss over that. Don't. No. Someone said that to me. I'm not particularly a violent man, but I think I would at very least threaten their safety to get them to shut up. That's not something that you say. It's not something that you insinuate. You don't make fun of someone's status as a veteran. Not all veterans do I even particularly like. I've met a lot of military and ex-military that I just don't get along with, but I'll always respect their service, and that's something that you don't do.
We owe them. You can't just stand up and discredit what they've done, because we're able to do what we're doing here right now because some veteran went overseas and his arm, his leg, half of his life. It
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
it's more like you said. It's a respect thing. You
Yeah,
don't have to like somebody to respect them.
no, you don't. There are various people. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. I respect her.
You
I
respect
mean,
their office. See,
yeah.
that's another thing too. I've heard people say this, especially a lot of the old folks,
Mhm.
and they say
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. Whether they said, I've heard them say, I have never seen so much disrespect for the office of the presidency.
Well, and here's the thing about it. I don't think that you necessarily even have to respect a president because of his office, but once they are elected into that office, one of my favorite metaphors I've ever heard is, wishing the president would fail is like wishing a captain would fail while we're all on a ship. You don't do it. The ship sinks, you still go down. And unfortunately, that's the derangement of the modern Democratic Party, and more specifically, their verbal arm, Hollywood. Bill Mayer is notoriously quoted as saying, and I'm going to misquote him here, and I apologize for that, but he's notoriously quoted as saying, um, "I hope for a recession so that Trump will fail." Like seriously, you hope for a recession, you hope for the downcline of American economy, the destruction of American way of life, just because you don't like a president.
Yeah, that totally worked the first time and the second time.
Right? And it's and Bill Mayer, I have my issues with Mayer anyway, and I would love an opportunity at some point in some distant future to go on the show, actually, just because I think he's a jerk, and I do really, really well when I'm arguing with jerks, and so.
Enjoy your Fanta.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I was making jokes before the show about it being a Nazi drink, and
Yeah, you
and
did.
it was invented for the Nazis. It really was, and it's not a particular favorite of mine, but it just was what was in the fridge. And I've had a cold, as you know, and I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I'm trying to keep the carbonation.
A lot of talking, and it kind of gets the throat worn out. I get it. And
Absolutely.
another thing about your blog, I've noticed, that there's like you said, the reality of the minimum wage increase. I mean, this is kind of a
It's hard hitting
this is like pulling the rug out from under yourself.
sometimes.
So I mean, yeah, the idea of more money is great. I mean, more money can buy you that tablet you want, that computer, that TV, the things that make our lives just so much more comfortable. We
And it, what
we
happens
can
when the
get
guy selling that tablet has to raise the price so he can pay for your minimum wage?
correct.
You know?
You know the backbone of America is the backbone of America is with unskilled workers. It's not those pencil pushers. It's not the white collar jobs. Although there's nothing, we have to have the white collar jobs, but you wouldn't have the white collar jobs without the blue collar jobs. You
Agreed.
it's this for that. These guys are down here, busting their butts to make the product, and your job and the white collar's job is to sell the product. You
Well,
know, you don't not necessarily. Sometimes it's to run logistics and analytics. Just
yeah.
all that. You have so many white collar jobs, and I'm not saying they're not important. I'm not discrediting them, but where would you be without that guy out there putting in his blue collar 40?
I agree with you on that. I've got a lot to address there, and I don't think that we're going to have the time for all of that. But as far as as far as the minimum wage and my article, it's once again I'm going to go back to Brad Stein. The truth hurts. It's supposed to hurt because that's how you know you don't have it. And the truth is, with exception of the original invention of the minimum wage, at no point has raising the minimum wage helped the overall economy. Um, Now look at and I pointed out in my article, and please feel free to go read it to get my words a little better. But look at Seattle. Seattle is not failing as miserably as I thought they would when they raised their minimum wage. And I actually have a brother-in-law who lives not far from there, and like I said, they're not failing as miserably as I thought they would. And something really strange happened to me. And I thought that this kind of blew my mind. But your upper level and your white collar workers and your higher skilled and your management actually ended up making more money because of the minimum wage raise, which I'm not even sure how that happened. But yeah, that is a conundrum, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Seattle did have an economic boom at that time. Coffee prices went down, which is, as you know, Seattle's major export or major business. I shouldn't say export. I'm sorry, they don't make it there, but it's their major business. And I don't want to seem like I'm completely ignorant when it comes to economy and products and things like that. But there was a huge boom in coffee at that time. The prices went down, and so that contributed a lot to why a lot of your higher level employees did get raises. However, what they did see is they saw the abolition of a lot of low level jobs. They saw the economy coming down in a sense that these people were either unable or unwilling to pay these new minimum wages. So therefore, they just destroyed the jobs and got rid of them. And then you didn't see them re-entering the job market because the jobs in their field weren't available anymore. So their re-entry flatlined completely in Seattle. And now I think, give it another year and a half, they're going to see a lot of downturn in their economy because of this. And I might be wrong. I'm not an economist. My predictions are based solely on my own experiences and my own research. So I could be wrong about this, but I definitely foresee them going into a downturn in the next year and a half or so. And it won't stop. And they'll go the way of Detroit and Flint and several other. And I like to use those two as an example because those were the Democratic meccas, if you will. That's a horrible term to use, I know, but they were used
loosely.
Yeah, it is used loosely, but they were the Democratic meccas. They were the idea of what the Democratic Party could do for people, and they failed so miserably. Venezuela was the socialist mecca. Everybody, look at what Venezuela is doing. Now look at what Venezuela is doing. See, that's where I think the Democratic Party fails a lot. They get these people who are so desperate for money to vote for them, knowing that these people don't look at long-term engagements, knowing they don't look 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. They're looking at the here and now. And a lot of people vote their pocket. I do. I vote my pocket, which is why I voted for Trump. My 401k and my portfolios have tripled since Trump took office because I knew what I was investing in. I knew what I was getting involved in. I knew what kind of a man he was. And I'm not going to say I knew what he would do, but I had a general idea of where he would go. And I made money.
He's a businessman.
Me voting my wallet is looking 5 to 10 years down the road. Your average minimum wage employee voting their wallet is looking at next week's paycheck. I mean,
or dinner.
Or dinner, yeah. I mean, and that was me once. I'm not downing that. That's a legitimate lifestyle that most Americans, I think, live. But raising minimum wage is not the way to do it. It's going to work really, really well for a while. People here in our state are going to make $11 an hour for a while, and then $11 is not going to be enough, and then they're going to have to make $14 an hour. Then they're going to have to make $18 an hour. Look at Hawaii. Without the tourist market of Hawaii, it's doomed, which has kind of always been the case. But the average Walmart employee, I don't know about now, but 10 years ago made $16 an hour in Hawaii just to make ends meet, just to buy loaves of bread.
Well, I mean, I see your point here, and what this increase in wages is going to do is it's a slow moving domino effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just knocked over the first domino, and it's dropping real slowly. And by 2020, when this $11 an hour hits,
it's not going to be enough.
It's by that time. I mean, it already cost me. I swear to it. I went to the grocery store tonight. No kidding. And I bought just the items that I needed to fix dinner tonight.
And
I spent $50.
Oh yeah, I spent nearly $100.
And that's ridiculous. I remember as a child going to the store with my mother, and you could get full of groceries for $100.
Oh.
And I'm not that old. So what does that say? I mean, we've gone up by leaps and bounds on things because everybody's demanding more. And when you demand more money and they give into giving you the more money, then the person who makes that product or harvests that product has to pay their workers more money. Therefore, it's a residual effect. They have to ask for more money for their product.
Well, okay, the minimum wage, it was issue 5, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at Tyson. Now, when was issue 5 added to the ballot?
Mm, issue 5 has been on the ballot for a while. I don't know the exacts.
Increase initiative. Let me see. I'm on Ballotpedia right now, which is one of my favorite sources, by the way, people. If you ever want to check anything, Ballotpedia. Anything political, it's going to have at least information on there. It's one of my favorite sources, mainly because it is not, as far as I can tell, leaning in any direction. Let's see. Voter register deadline, early voting, elections. Sorry. Issue 5 passed. I know that. I don't know. It just has the election date on here. But I'm looking at Tyson stocks, right?
Yes.
Issue 5 was voted yes on today, right? Or yesterday. Yesterday. Tuesday. So I'm watching. The stock had a little dive, but today, I mean, it flatlined. It went in today alone, capping out at Tyson stock, which is a local big business here, local public business here.
Worldwide conglomerate. I
mean, yeah, but the home office is here. They work from here. Significant amount of their employees work here. So at 11:45 a.m., they were capping out at $61.95 a share. That's US dollar. They closed at $61.50 a share. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a hard hit when you're looking at a portfolio as big as Tyson's.
Yes, and especially when they have a lot of their workers have what they call company shares.
Yeah,
and absolutely. you take $60-something and you multiply it by 5. That's $300. And
absolutely. And it's people are just thinking about what their wallet is. They're not thinking about the fact that their 401k just took one hell of a hit.
You cut your 401k by 3%.
Yeah,
and 3% is a significant amount when it comes to, say, 30 years down the road. When that 3% is $35,000. So
I've listened to economists argue back and forth. It's a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's bad. The point that I like to make in my blog is I love mom and pop shopping. I love downtown stores, and I love antique stores and things like that, and local stores. You don't have that with a raised minimum wage. That disappears. And I got into it on Facebook with somebody earlier today that said, well, we own a small business and we already pay people $15 an hour because that's a living wage and yada, yada. But she refused to say what her business was. She refused to say what it is they did. She refused to even let me know if they were skilled workers or not. Obviously, if you're running a plumbing company, your employees are going to be skilled. You're paying them more than minimum wage. If you're running, Mama Bonnie's antique shop downtown, and you're hiring a high school kid to work for 4 hours after school every day, you're not going to be paying them $15, $20 an hour to do it. And
you'd be lucky if they get 9.
And I love that people like to use these situational evidence, and I'm trying to think of the word here, and anecdotal evidence. Thank you. I love that people try to use this anecdotal evidence. Well, I do this. Well, okay, but what is your business? What do you do? Do you have to pay them that wage? Are you going to give them a raise to counterbalance the minimum wage raise? These are the things that are important. I work at a company that pays its average ground level, entry level employee $14 an hour, $14 to $15 an hour. That's not even minimum wage. But then that means that anybody above ground level is making well above a $15 minimum wage. Right? So if they raise it to minimum wage, are they going to raise all of ours? I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars at that point. Or are they going to leave us where we're at and leave us pissed off because we're making almost minimum wage to do much higher level jobs?
Yeah, it seems like that this is setting itself up for implosion.
It is. It's economic implosion. It's socialist agenda is what it is.
And slowly but surely, it's creeping its way in, and it's going to cause, like, for lack of a better term, I'll just say it again, it's going to cause the economy to implode on itself.
I would definitely gear anyone who's listening or watching to Run Don't Walk Productions. It's one that I personally use a lot. The guy he's very sarcastic, he's very witty, but he's very informative at the same time. And he goes through a lot of videos. He went through the Bernie Sanders town hall about wage earning and wage earners and things like that and living wages, and it was a mess. But they had a woman from Walmart who was making $15 an hour after 18 years, I think, at Walmart. Well, at 18 years at Walmart and you're not management, you did something wrong. I mean, you made some decisions in life that I don't think were the best idea. I think that you need to stop complaining about it. Or there was one woman who was making $14.50 an hour, which was great when she was married, but then her husband left her and she had her kid. Well, I sympathize with you, I really do. But why is that your employer's responsibility? I think at that point you need to seek new employment.
Well, it's never been your. I've always been a firm believer in, when I walk into work, my personal life is at the door. I'll pick it up on my way out, and
Exactly.
I never bring work home because it's not meant to come home with me.
Absolutely not. No.
And you don't
Half my work is from home.
you don't take your personal life into work because it will tear down your work life and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So you can't expect to be a good worker if you're, for lack of a better term, complaining about, that your wife isn't doing what her wifely duties, or vice versa. Your husband isn't doing what he's supposed to do. My kids, this, my mom, that, you don't,
agree with you. And as
you
an
don't,
employer, I agree with you.
yes. And, I'm myself, and people, I have people come in and they're not in the best of moods, that because something's going wrong at home, and I have to tell them, I have to, politely coach them and say, look, that's home. You're here to work.
Mm-hmm.
I need you at work. I don't need you at home.
Absolutely.
So let's get in the game.
Let me present you with just a hypothetical here, a situation. So you are a manager or a store manager, and your employee comes in and says, my husband left me. I have this kid to take care of. I need a raise. This employee has made $12 an hour. Let's say $12.50 an hour up to this point. She's been there for a year and a half. It says, I need a raise. And you say, well, how much do you need? And she said, well, I got to take care of my kid, so I need at least $17 an hour. What do you say to that? I sympathize with you, but you're not doing a $17 an hour job.
I mean, there's so many variables when it comes to a raise anyway. Even a 50-cent raise, or even a quarter, actually, just say a quarter. I'm going, as a manager, I would go to, performance. You always have to base it on performance. And are you going to be worth that 25-cent raise that I'm going to give you? Let's go apples to apples here. Has your performance been adequate enough for this 25 to 50-cent raise? And if they can't, it's just like, even if anything in the world, you have to go apples to apples, because otherwise you have nothing. You have no trade.
The national minimum wage is $7.25 an hour right now. Let's say we adjust that to $15 an hour tomorrow. Okay, now this is an extreme situation. Obviously they're going to do it as a gradual term. You can't just, you would look at the downfall, the complete implosion of the economy if you did it overnight. But let's say that it did happen, and you went to $15 an hour and it worked. And suddenly you're making $15 an hour. Well, suddenly within the next year, a new tax bill will be ratified by the Senate. I guarantee you this happens. I guarantee you. New tax bill ratified by the Senate in order to make adjustments to the tax code and put the brackets where they're supposed to be in relative to the minimum wage. Okay. So now suddenly your $15 an hour is putting you into another tax bracket for at least the next year. Okay. So you're paying more in taxes alone, which you were not prepared for. People don't think about that. At least for a year.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, at least for a year, you're paying more in taxes, which people are not prepared for. Then you have to adjust the level of inflation, because all of a sudden the dollar isn't worth as much because everybody has it. All right. Now, supply and demand, people don't realize it, but supply and demand works with world currencies as well. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy the idea of trading world currency. And I have dabbled in trading world currency. It's because supply and demand does work. In Venezuela, I forget what the name of their currency is. I want to say it's the dollar, actually. I want to say it's the Venezuelan dollar. Uh, but in American dollars, people have 500,000, and it's not enough to buy a pack of toilet paper. That's an extreme situation. It's a horrible example because I haven't researched it. But the point is, here in America, everybody's making $15 an hour. Suddenly, $15 an hour is worth no more than $7.50 an hour.
No, they're always going to find. There's always going to be a way to check it because there's we've hit the cap. We're at the ceiling, and you're trying to ceiling, and it's not going to work.
Well, it all went to hell when we had to come up with a radical idea in order to save our own economy. And we stopped basing it on gold and silver notes. So now we're printing funny money. I mean, it have been for decades now. So it becomes a supply and demand concept. So now you've got, if everybody has it, it's not worth anything.
It's utterly ridiculous how we've turned from, a nation that, was sought and feared to a nation that's sought but laughed at.
And that's just where it is. That's just where it is. We had a group of people who I think their hearts were in the right place. I think that they were trying to do the best for what they had, but I also think that they were trying to do the best for themselves. And one of my favorite, and I use a lot of movie quotes. People know I use a lot of movie quotes. But in Gladiator, he says, "I try to be a man for the people, but I don't pretend to be a man of the people." Once again, I'm sure I'm misquoting that, but that's the problem. We have these career senators and we have presidents now and people who are in it for themselves. And that's why I liked the idea of Donald Trump. I did. I didn't fool myself as to who the man was, but I liked the idea of him because he's done what he was going to do. I like it what he said in his book, Art of the Deal. And once again, I'm going to misquote, but he says, I will consistently misquote things. But in the Art of the Deal, he says, I don't make deals for money. I don't need any more money. I make deals because I enjoy it, because it's how I get my rocks off. And that's just the man. That's how he is. He doesn't need money. He's lost money in the presidency. This was not a good investment for his own personal portfolio, but it doesn't matter. Losing $1 billion when you have $7 billion doesn't mean a whole lot. So, it does. It does. I'm being facetious, but he's a man who is actually for the people. And that's what we needed, and that's what we failed. So many, and I'm not even talking about Obama. I'm talking about the Clintons and the Bushes, and we failed for so long. Jimmy Carter was one of the most weak-willed presidents we've ever had.
Don't even get me started on him.
Yeah, a good man. All of them, I think, were relatively good people. Maybe not George H.W., but that's a whole different story. But all of them, I think, were good people, and their hearts were in the right place, but they were more worried about themselves than they were about the people. We finally have a president that is for the people, and that's what we've been needing, and that's what we've been desiring, and he's making our country not only great again, as he says in his campaign slogan, but he's making it feared again, and he's making it strong again, and that's what we needed.
Like I said, I'll say it again.
It's campaign writer. I'm available.
I'll say it again. Trump is the most uncouth man I've ever had the privilege of ever following.
I'm going to end up paying for this, but I'm going to tell you right now. He reminds me of one of my grandfathers, actually, and which one I'm talking about.
Yes, I do know which one you're talking about. Who doesn't?
He reminds me very much.
He just doesn't care. He's like, I'm the president. I've got money. Oh, I don't need more money.
That brings me to an excellent point. Have you seen this Acosta thing? No,
enlighten me.
The White House CNN correspondent that was in the middle of a post-midterm. Oh, I can't think of the word now. It's very late. I apologize. Trump was answering questions, and he wouldn't sit down. He wouldn't stop. He didn't get the answer he wanted, so he kept pushing. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I love the woman. I think she's my kind of crazy. She is just a wonderful woman, I think, but she is a little out there. And she said that the man had assaulted one of the press secretaries for the White House, which I don't think was quite the case. I think he was being rude, but the press secretary came up to do her job and take the microphone away, as the president had asked her to do. And the president had told him to sit down, told him he was being rude multiple times. And then his arm fell, and it kind of smacked the secretary's arm as she was trying to grab the microphone. And he apologized, and he said, "Excuse me," and everything was fine. Sarah Sanders, I think, kind of blew it a little out of proportion. And like I said, she's my kind of crazy. She knows how to take things and run with them. But I don't think that his intention was to assault the woman. I think that he was being rude. He was being forgive the phrasing, he was being an ass. And that's exactly how Donald Trump, I think, described him, if I remember right. And then they called up another guy who was defending him.
Excuse me.
Time that he was supposed to, no, you're fine. Took his time that he was supposed to be asking questions to defend Acosta. And Donald Trump told him to sit down too, said, "I'm done with this." And then he tried to ask another question to somebody else, and another woman kept getting up and yelling and interrupting. And so he told her to sit down. And finally he's like, "I'm done. I'm not, nobody can have any decorum here. I'm done. I'm walking away." And I realized that it made Trump kind of look aggressive, and I could see them spinning it as a temper tantrum. In my opinion, I thought he handled it extremely well. He just told him, he's like, "You're rude. You're being rude, and I'm not answering." And finally, he's like, "If nobody can have decorum, I'm gone. I'm doing you a favor here." Well, then Acosta came back to ask questions again later and to do another interview on the White House, and they told him that he was not welcome. His White House pass had been revoked. So now CNN correspondent Jim or James Acosta, something like that, he is no longer allowed on the grounds of the White House. Now, they have other correspondents who can. They're not blocking CNN. He's not stopping the press. This got blown out of proportion as, "Oh, the President Trump is against freedom of the press." That's not what happened. He was being rude. And he's known for being rude. He's known for being abrasive. He's kind of like the left version of me. But
CNN doesn't have the best track record when it comes to reporting the most how would you put this, what?
No, they are very much
they kind of
they have been since Parkland.
They kind of just report what they want.
They really do. And I can be accused of the same thing. I'm known for putting a right spin on things, and I like I said, I don't lie, but I do lean. And and a lot of people,
everybody does
that. I enjoy Ben Shapiro's show in the Daily Wire publication, which is one of my absolute favorites. I watch Ben Shapiro almost religiously. You know this. You've seen me. Steven Crowder, I enjoy him. I'm not quite as addicted to Shapiro, but he does make me laugh. He is funny, and he is informative. I take him with a grain of salt, but he is a good man, I think. And there are various others. Tucker Carlson, who is very right spin, but he's honest. And that's where I like a lot of my news sources. I don't mind them being right spin, but be honest. And I watch CNN. I follow CNN on Twitter all the time. I follow the New York Times and Huffington Post as well. And they are all very left-leaning publications.
We got a couple more minutes here, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Right. And you mentioned Tucker Carlson, and
I knew this was going to eventually come out.
How about his little run-in with Antifa?
Okay, so here's the thing. I am adamantly opposed to Antifa. We had a small Antifa presence here. I apologize. A small
once again, folks, it is late.
It is late, and I have been ill, and so I'm doing my best here. But we had a small Antifa presence here, and it's pretty much been squashed out, I think. But we have a very large 3%er presence here, which they're like the right-wing opposite side of Antifa, a little bit less violent. And I have been tied to 3%er groups in the past, and I'm not a part of their group, but I do tend to sympathize with them. They don't hurt people. They don't try to hurt people. They seem scary because they walk around with guns. But truthfully, they're all about keeping the peace, in my opinion. And I might be wrong. I hope I'm not. But Antifa is a thorn in my side. I hate Antifa. I'm not. I'm not upset about saying that, and I don't shy away from saying that. I hate them. I think that they're a terrorist cell here in America, a domestic terrorist cell, and I think that they do need to be squashed. That being said, I think the same thing about a lot of what they call the alt-right, the neo-Nazis and the KKK and things like that. They're terrorist cells. Antifa just happens to be one of the more active of them. Antifa treats anybody who disagrees with them as Nazis and absolute enemies of the state, and they get aggressive. You notice they never attack people like me. You know, I am a journalist, but I am also a nearly 6 foot tall, bald, bearded, 270-pound man. I live in a right to carry state, so I could at any time be armed. So they don't mess with guys like me. They've never messed with me personally, but I've witnessed a lot of what they've done. And like I said, I have family from up in Seattle and Portland area, and Portland is a huge hub for Antifa. And I think that my biggest issue is a lot of these guys, I've watched videos, and these guys are not the kind of guys who win fights. They're the kind of guys who gang up on people and jump them. I've witnessed people dragging old ladies through the street by their American flags that they were holding, and kicking women because they announced that they were pro-choice on the street corner. And I mean, straight round kicking a woman actually hurt her pretty bad, actually. These are not warriors. These are cowards. There's a difference. And what they did to Tucker Carlson was, forgive the phrasing, but deplorable. They had they done that to my house, they would have been shot. And I'm not saying that I wish them any ill will. I'm not saying that I wish to hurt them or kill them. But anybody who slams into my door trying to break it down will be shot.
And that's an act of aggression.
It's an act of aggression. It's attempting to invade a home. And
it's a threat to your life and property.
In a right to carry state. And we also live in a state with castle law. So the second that door comes down, I will pull a trigger.
Well, we also, every man has a right to defend his home. And if somebody's threatening your life and property, you have a right to defend your life and property.
Absolutely. And, I own guns. It's no secret. I wish Tucker had owned guns. His wife was at home. She hid in a pantry, turned off the lights, and called the police. When the police arrived, they scattered. Antifa, they scattered. But they were announcing, we know where you sleep. We know where you live. I mean, the man has 4 children, all of which are of age that they can be left home alone. But now they can't. They have to be afraid in their own home. And no one in this country should be afraid in their own home. These are the same tactics the KKK used during the civil rights movement. How is that right? How is that okay? They're against Nazis, but they can do the same thing to anybody of ideological difference.
It goes back to that double standards thing. I mean,
exactly.
The left side, and I've noticed this. I'm not going to say all leftists are like this, so let me go ahead and put that disclaimer out there, because not all rights go right.
I think that's what we call the alt left. They're the extreme branch. And if Hollywood and CNN and things like that are their mouthpiece, then Antifa is the left's right hand. But
yes,
and it's just like I said in one of my blog posts. I said, I will never leave my home with the intention of doing you harm. I was referring to Antifa. I said, I will never leave my home with the intention of doing you harm. But do not think for a second that if you were to start trouble, if you were to come after me, I will defend me or mine with any and all means possible. And I think that's the stance that Tucker needs to make. And I have to applaud him. He's been a trooper in all of this. He didn't make a statement while he was on the air. He didn't leave the air. He didn't come straight out condemning anybody involved. He has been a modicum of decorum here.
Yeah, it's a very it's a very crazy, messed up world that we live in at the moment, and unfortunately, I don't see it getting better anytime soon because
no, but we're trying. That's what the important part is.
True. I mean, we're kind of stuck in the mud at the moment, though. Our wheels are spinning, but we're not moving, and I can't say we're not moving completely. We haven't got out of the mud hole yet. We're still stuck.
Yeah.
And we have to figure our way out of this. And the only way we're going to figure our way out of this is if both sides agree. And unfortunately, it's going to take a little while before that happens.
I think that we're at the, like I said, we're at the edge of the knife. But the weird part is, I think that these are growing pains or birth pains. I think that America is at the base where it's starting to change. And I mean, we've been a country now for well over 200 years. It's time. It's time. And I just hope that it changes into something that we need it to be, not something that suits the instant gratification mentality of the current generation. I pray that our children make it better, and it's an old saying, if war has to come, let it come in my time so that my children may know peace. And it's something I live by. Unfortunately, we're getting old. And that's where we kind of fall into the problems.
I mean, what did we start off with? We the people, we do ordain these for our posterity, our posterity being our children. We're supposed to, run it down. I mean, I've horribly misquoted that. It's been, years since I've, recited the preamble. I mean, it's, and
I started right.
But it's we live for our children. We teach our children to do right. We teach them right from wrong. And I know that right from wrong is on an individual basis because that goes back to morality. So, but there are things that are concrete right and wrong.
Well, and there's things that I wasn't taught that I try to teach my child, and I hope everybody teaches theirs. And I like to think that they do, even if I know that I'm wrong. I was taught to fight for everything that you ever want in this world, and I don't think that that's true. I think you work for everything that you ever want in this world, and it took me a long time to figure that out and to learn the difference. I think that we have philosophers and high thinkers that are leading the way in our time. I think that we have people like Mike Rowe. I think that we have people like Donald Trump, even. As much as a lot of people will hate to admit it, there is a lot of wisdom in some of his words. Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro. We have the people who are leading us in the right direction, and we have the candidates that can lead us in the right direction. Mike West, who was just up for a governorship in Arkansas, I think is a great man. I think he's an incredibly intelligent man. He did lose to the GOP candidate because I don't think that he was quite ready for a governorship, but he is an incredibly intelligent man. I hope him the best. I hope we see him in the very near future. Mike Huckabee, I think, is a great man. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but we have people who are leading us in the right direction. We have good, moral men and women leading us in the right direction. The problem is we have others who have other ideas.
Yes, I mean that's a good high note to really end on here because we're approaching. Actually, we've passed the 11 o'clock hour, and
yeah,
we're gonna have to cut this off here pretty soon. And I do thank you for your time tonight, and coming in and sharing your ideas, and of course opening up your blog to us.
Yes, please read. Feel free to comment. It's just an open forum for everybody.
Yeah. Once again, folks, you can find this blog at creekviking.wordpress.com. You can look him up at Creek Viking on Facebook. Also, you can also add is the Francis Marion Review, and you can send suggestions or comments to lnfmr@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Once again, thank you all for helping us pilot this wonderful blog that I hope will absolutely take off and go places because everybody deserves to hear the truth. Everybody deserves to hear opinions. Everybody deserves to express their opinions, and hopefully this is a platform we can expand and possibly allow people to do this on an individual basis. And I also tonight, sir, want to end with a quote that came from your blog, which I had avidly read, and we're going to quote Mike Rowe, who you just advocated here. It says, "We've waged war on work. We've waged war on work. We have collectively agreed, stupidly, that work is the enemy." Folks,
I would love to. I sign off my blog every way, or in a specific way, every article, if you don't mind.
Ah, shoot.
All right. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Thank you, folks, for stopping in tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night.